Alright guys, so today we're going to be checking out something from PancreasNoWork, and that is the Human Covenant War, in which aliens are real and hate you, specifically. This apparently has the Remembrancer in there, and the Remembrancer is a lore guy that I have not seen yet, so there's that. I am joined, because I'm always joined in 40k, well, not 40k, but Halo things, by Arco.
Hello.
And I have dragged Eagle to Brazil as well.
I'm being held against my will. They're only feeding me stale peanuts and airliner
Silence you! Anyhow, we're going to get into this. I have enjoyed a lot of PancreasNoWork's stuff in the past. I like his opinions, except for the Tau. And let's just get going. Here we go.
Humanity's power is, if not supreme in the galaxy, then damn near close to it. While yes, it is surrounded on all fronts by enemies, it only can't deal with them because it cannot bring its full might to bear on any single one of them. There is no single threat in 40k capable of eliminating the Imperium of Man. If you're a fan of them, this is because various things like industrial capability, population, and more keep humanity ahead of the curve. If you're not a fan of the Imperium, this is because it has plot armor thick enough to deflect tank shells. Feel free to decide which camp I belong in at your leisure. But in Halo, such is not the case, despite hundreds of years of constant...
the boss.
Yes.
Another reason why the Imperium is so overpowered, mainly for the Ultramarines, is because Marnius Calgar had all their souls sold to Matt Ward.
And technological advancement in all fields, from medical to military, humanity is not the top dog in the galaxy. Incredibly important to it? Quite. But the #1 undisputed superpower? Not even close.
I wouldn't even say they're incredibly important to it. Like, humanity got rickrolled. Like, savagely.
They're important in the sense that they were the ones chosen by the Forerunners to take the mantle of responsibility, but other than that...
Okay. Yes.
Digress for a moment, Bungie has this weird obsession with the number 7, and having just hit 77,000 subs myself, I want to make this special little video where I once again force Halo knowledge down all of your throats. Am I comparing it to 40k with all the bias you can expect from someone who holds more positive feelings for Halo than he does most of his old friends from high school? Nope. Today is just a history lesson, a fun timeline of the major events of the Human Covenant War where humanity avoided extinction by the skin of its teeth. But first... Raid Shadow Legends.
Raid Shadow Legends.
This video. Millions of people own it. Millions of people play it.
Let's say it. Raid
Shadow. Arco, finish it. Finish it.
Arco, do it.
Shade Rado Legends.
Damn it.
Let's talk about why you should be one of them. It is once again time for me to discuss
guys. If you have not played Raid Shadow Legends,
Raid
you
is
would like
once
to play
again
it.
focusing
I'm
on the
putting
glorious
his
pointy-eared
link in the description
bastards, and
down
I am
below. There
all
you
too
go.
happy to oblige. Thousands of years
And he loves elves. Him and Strider would get along.
ago, the High Elven civilization was born, and it was good. Lizardman Empire collapse? Psst, who cares? Not the elves, they kept on trucking. Rampaging orc hordes invading? Not a problem at all, just kill them and move on. It was Sirith, the Lord of Darkness, who finally was able to
This is Malekith.
take them down a peg, creating the Dark Elves and causing a massive elven civil
does he
war.
have an
You might go,
Oedipus
wow,
complex?
Pancreas.
Oh God, please! I didn't need to hear that. I just threw out the thing. You had to throw out the Oedipus complex. Is it really an Oedipus complex if you're actually doing it? That's the real question.
Yeah.
They're so stupid, this episode is over. But that's the wrong way to look at it. They were so powerful, only other elves could take them down. And even that didn't work. The Dark Elves were exiled to go sit in the timeout corner for all eternity, and the High Elf Kingdom of Avari is the richest and most powerful in all of Teleria today. You cannot keep a High Elf down, they're simply too perfect for that to happen in every universe, Raid included. And sure enough, you can tell just how glorious they are from the champions shown here. From stalwart warriors to wizards throwing magic at whatever annoys them enough today to warrant being erased from existence.
The last guy's name was Jingle Hunter.
There's something for everyone amongst the High Elves. I'm a big fan of the Battle Sage and the Exemplar. The Battle Sage because there's nothing more elegant and elven than casting the mightiest of magics, and the Exemplar because hitting things with big sword makes my monkey brain happy. But I have more elven news for you because Ray just released a new faction, the Sylvan Watchers. Sylvan sounds a lot like elven, and with good reason. They've got forest elves, ents, druids, and fae in their roster. Wood elves and their allies in fantasy settings are yet another one of my favorite races. There's something special about watching a tree come to life and beat the snot out of whatever is pissing it off today while an elf fills the enemy with arrows the whole time. And now you can finally summon and wield these fearsome warriors in Raid Shadow Legends. Raid's also got a full lineup of events, along with the new season of the Forge Pass, where you can get your hands on some of the most powerful gear the game has ever seen. If the prospect of more elves isn't enough to get you into Raid, first of all, that drives me to the very...
That looks very Nurgle / Zinchian.
Lehenkin chunk.
Chunkla.
Cusp of rage. But here's something else to sweeten the deal for you. Just
Look, this is Raiden from Mortal Kombat. With the Raiden the Beekeeper.
in case.
Yeah,
Using my
but
link that's
shrooms.
conveniently located in
Yes.
both the description and pinned comment of this video, or with a QR code staring you in the face at this very moment, you get $30 worth of bonuses for free. Rector Drath, the epic champion, 200,000 silver, 1 energy refill to keep you in the game, 1 XP
There you
boost,
go.
and an ancient shard to get yet another champion with. All this treasure will wait for you here in the inbox, right there in the corner, can't miss it. Rewards are only available for the next 30 days and for new players only, so if
And
you
this
haven't
is
gotten
a
a
valid
raid yet, then
promotion,
now's
guys,
the
so
perfect
if you
time to
wanna
do
get
so.
this,
Download
get
Raid
it.
Shadow Legends now, and I'll see you in the game. Now, back to Halo time. For a
Yes.
brief introduction to both of the major players involved, the Covenant is an alliance of alien races banded together by a common religion. A belief that an ancient species known as the Forerunners ascended to godhood through their technology and left it behind to be found by the Covenant, so its races too could join them in divinity. I've already made a video about them to some extent, so go watch that for a little bit more information on them. Or don't. I'm not a cop. Humanity in Halo, meanwhile, did all the usual science fiction trappings. Technology exploded and space travel became relatively commonplace after a few short 100 years. All sorts of cultures and ideologies expanded across the stars, sometimes leading to conflict and sometimes leading to more conflict. By 2525, the beginning year of the Human Covenant War, humanity numbered a little over 800 colonies, with about 210 of them being known as the Inner Colonies. These were the most well-developed and populated human planets, being the first ones colonized. You can probably guess that the other planets and moons were known as the Outer Colonies from this information, but if you couldn't, there's a little bit of Halo lore on the house for you. All of this was kept together by the United Nations Space Command, or UNSC as it shall henceforth be known, in order to save myself all those unnecessary syllables. First contact between humanity and the Covenant wasn't even official. Some jackal pirates just raided some poor merchant ship. At first, the Office of Naval Intelligence, or ONI, the sneaky bastards of the UNSC whose rap sheet includes such lovely things as every war crime known to man and kidnapping children to create child
Good times rhymes with war crimes.
super soldiers with,
Except if
didn't
it's
even
being
think it was
done by
aliens.
ONI.
At first, they just thought it was insurrection.
No, if it's done by Oni at that point, it's just brain hemorrhaging. It's just flat out brain hemorrhaging.
Rewind.
Rewinding.
Lovely things as every war crime known to man and kidnapping children to create child super soldiers with, didn't even think it was aliens. At first, they just thought it was insurrectionist activity. They laid a trap, and surprise, it's not just pirates, it's alien pirates. This led to a bit of a skirmish, and Avery Johnson was there for this whole time. A little fun fact for those who wonder what he was up to before the Halo games.
And he's a bad man.
Yeah.
Yeet.
Eventually, however, official contact was attempted. It was really goddamn funny because the humans tried to show that they were a peaceful species and just generally attempted to make the best first impression. So they laid out this buffet of fruits and veggies to be all like, we are peaceful, we respect all life, please be our friends. And then the race that greeted them was most commonly known as the Brutes. Should have laid out the bacon, humanity.
I didn't know this. I didn't know this.
Oh yes, because
Specific. It was a particular ship which was captained by a brute and crewed mostly by his pack.
Oh my god. Like, first contact failures.
Delegation went bad when a grunt got
because
a
the
bit trigger
brutes
happy and
are
opened
made
fire.
for excellent diplomats.
Look, monkey smash. That's all they know. Come on, man.
On a human soldier, and the Covenant force retreated. And then pretty rapidly, things get real bad if you're a human being. Largely unrelated to all of this, 3 of the ruling race of the Covenant, known as prophets, because I'm not saying whatever word this is, approached a foreigner AI asking it to begin a new age for the Covenant. The Covenant was all about marking periods like this, you see. Very 40k with the names, too. Instead of telling them to go nuts with this new era of prosperity or whatever, though, the AI told them that they're all a bunch of morons. The whole reason the
Lovely.
Covenant bothered sending a delegation to humanity, you see, was to recover foreigner artifacts they detected. Or at least that was the biggest reason, maybe not the whole reason. Before going to harvest, they read the fancy space runes they had, and it came back as reclamation, or reclaim, as in go reclaim all of our lost god tech, you goobers. The problem was, as the AI shortly told them, reclaim was actually reclaimer. The Covenant thought that the humans were just hoarding a metric ass ton of Forerunner artifacts. Turns out that humanity was the Forerunner artifacts. This revelation that humanity was their true successors and not the Covenant would have shattered their religion, and more to the point, their empire. Being in charge of the Covenant, the prophets were very much a fan of not letting this happen. So they
Yes.
hushed that up, and in order to make sure no one found out, decided to erase humanity from existence. Good plan, prophets.
Yeah, because heresy is nothing without a little bit of cooperation.
Now, see, he's not quote unquote wrong, but he is sort of. I'll just explain it.
Go for it.
Do it.
Okay, those jackal pirates mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm.
That was a ship under the employ of the Ministry of, I believe, Ministry. It doesn't really matter. They were tasked with exploring and with charting new worlds.
Right.
Every single Covenant ship has a Forerunner device on it called a luminary. The purpose of a luminary is to scan for and detect Forerunner artifacts.
Oh.
Ah.
Now, see, this Jackal ship, it went near to the world of Harvest, one of the outer colonies, the first outer colony to be found by the Covenant.
Yes.
And the luminary collected a bunch of the data, but the captain of that ship belayed sending the data back to High Charity because of selfish reasons and mostly just wanting to scavenge and pirate some shit for herself.
Jackal being Jackal.
Yes. The UNSC, or ONI, and in particular Sergeant Avery Johnson, set up a little trap because a bunch of small merchant ships had been getting, well, attacked by this pirate Jackal ship. And that was actually the first conflict between humanity and the Covenant.
Oh.
And in fact, Sergeant Avery Johnson was the first to kill a Covenant species.
Nice.
Oh,
He killed a jackal with a battle rifle, yes.
Because he knows what the ladies like.
And there was one member of that ship's crew, right?
Mhm.
I don't quite remember what happened to the ship itself, but all of the jackal crew members died. There was one member of the crew who was a grunt, and in particular a deacon, so basically a priest. And he made sure that the data collected by the luminary on that ship was sent back to High Charity, and he escaped in an escape pod.
and I take it that's how the prophets found out about the whole reclaim.
I'm getting to that, right?
Okay.
So that grunt, deacon, he wound up getting picked up by that ship full of brutes, right?
Oh, yay.
Oh.
And, you know, his story sort of goes on from there in a different direction. The point being, he showed the brutes the data from that luminary, and they said, oh, holy shit, there's a lot of foreigner artifacts here. We're going to be fucking heroes of the Covenant. Let's go down there. And, you know, we know how that diplomatic mission ended. But the data, when it got to High Charity, it got into the hands of a particular prophet, the Minister of Concert, I think. In any case, his name was Ord. And Ord worked with another prophet, who I don't remember the name of, but in particular. But they both had their hands on this new data about a world full of Forerunner artifacts, thousands of them, all with the label Reclamation. Now, these two wanted to get into office and become the new hierarchs, and in so doing declare a new age of the Covenant's calendar, because they had high ambitions.
Yeah.
So what they did was they went to the Forerunner Dreadnought at the center of High Charity, which powers the entirety of High Charity.
Where mendicant bias is stored.
Yeah. They went there and they communicated. They sort of, I think they bribed, or they didn't bribe, but another prophet who was really old happened to be there. He was the keeper of one of the creepers of the Dreadnought, but he allowed them in to show the data that they had to an AI, an oracle, in the Forerunner Dreadnought.
Lovely.
That AI was a shard of the AI named Mendicant Bias, who is a character in himself and was a big part of the Forerunner Flood War. But they showed the data to Mendicant Bias, and Mendicant Bias basically wakes up for the first time in thousands of years and tells them they're all fucking morons. And that the symbols don't mean reclamation, they mean reclaimer. And it basically said, okay, I'm going to go to these reclaimers and I'm going to bring them to the place they need to go. Basically, the Ark. And the Forerunner Dreadnought was then about to launch out of high charity and leave it dead in the water.
Oh, damn.
But then a bunch of Lekgolo worms, the worms that hunters are made of.
Yes.
Yeah, because a bunch of those are always, searching through the Dreadnought's systems and plumbing and various shit. One of them bit into a wire or something, or they interfered in some way, and Mendicant Bias was disconnected from his housing, and the Forerunner Dreadnought fell silent again. And a shitload of Lekgolo worms were burnt out of their holes around the superstructure.
Mendicant was really about to pull the plug on the Covenant there and then.
He was like, fuck you guys, I'm leaving.
He wanted to go to the humans, as he'd been waiting for contact with humans so that he could bring them to the Ark and help them claim the mantle of responsibility. So then you have these three prophets who have just heard that reclamation actually means reclaimer, and they didn't fully understand what the AI was saying, but all three of them basically suspected that humanity were actually Forerunners who had been left behind after the Forerunners went on the Great Journey. This entire thing completely threw a wrench into the entire basis of the Covenant's religion, that being that by believing in the Forerunners and going on the Great Journey, all who believe will ascend to godhood. But wait, there's Forerunners right here. What the hell are we doing now? And they immediately knew that if this information got out, it would be a gigantic fucking clusterfuck, and the Covenant would fall apart. So these three prophets attempted to then, well, they didn't attempt, they did, blackmailed the current hierarchs out of office and got themselves into office as the new hierarchs, and they became the prophets of truth, mercy, and regret.
Aptly named. Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's continue.
Appropriate.
Oh, God, I still remember jumping on the thing and punching it in the face.
Now, in the interest of not making this video either 3 hours
runs.
long or a 15-part series, I'm going to sum up how it went for the most part and not read through every single battle I can find in the wiki or pull from the depths of my memory. I'll give some highlights though, because by God are some of these moments in the Human Covenant War the coolest shit you've ever heard of. Harvest, the planet all this went down on and where first contact was officially made, was the first battleground of the Human Covenant War, and it initially went about as well as you'd expect for the UNSC. Despite managing to evacuate most of the civilians, the Covenant began glassing its surface with their warships. Fighting on Harvest actually managed to go on for roughly 5 years, with the brutal back-and-forth war taking place. Halo Wars says it best.
At first it was going well, then setback after setback.
Despite the
That's a
UNSC setting their
setback.
finest, the Covenant would never be pushed back for long, and their vastly superior technology ensured that any engagement would be costly for the UNSC even if victory was achieved. Turns out, energy shields are pretty good at deflecting 5.56 rounds, who would have thought? For a brief sidetrack, let's talk about the Spartans, aka the only thing you know about Halo if you've never played the games or read the books. Or I guess watched the TV show, but I prefer to pretend that never happened. The Spartans were super soldiers created by
let's
Oni
not.
to wage war against the insurrectionist movement. The UNSC was getting Vietnamed in space a lot of the time, and you can only nuke so many cities to get rid of the enemies in them before public opinion takes a bit too sharp of a nosedive. The
Yes.
most well-known and powerful of the Spartans, including the Master Chief, were Spartan 2s. The Spartan 1s were largely just augmented Marines, not the demigods of war that the 2s were. As it would turn out, though, they were just as good at killing aliens as they were at killing random insurrectionists, and quickly changed their priorities from killing random terrorists to kill anything that isn't a human being. Indeed, so fearsome were they that the Covenant began to refer to them as demons. No, not demons with an A, you Warhammer Goblin. They were even deployed to Harvest, though their initial engagements were just as dangerous for them as it was for the average UNSC Marine. They were just better equipped to deal with it. The Spartan II Samuel was lost in their first battle against the Covenant, though the mission was ultimately a success as a result of his sacrifice. He was 14 at the time, just in case you forgot that they're just child soldiers.
Yes.
Meanwhile, for the space battle portion of this sci-fi series, Vice Admiral Preston J. Cole was busy giving the Covenant the runaground across the outer colonies and near Harvest. He was in charge of the then largest human space fleet ever assembled, and his efforts actually were what led to the UNSC retaking Harvest for the first time in 2526. His brilliance was such that despite the odds stacked against him, he regularly achieved success in his battles. Even with the Spartans' deployment to Harvest, however, and the continued efforts of the Navy and other armed forces, Harvest was eventually taken. If you watch the Covenant and Warhammer video, you know that I was a big fan of jerking off the Covenant's tech, and that is still most certainly the case right now. Human tacticians were frequently able to outwit the Covenant, but to make a comparison, Napoleon could probably outwit a couple hundred US Marines if he had an army of 10,000. He'd still be bleeding from the fight and wouldn't be able to stand against the full US military. Likewise, every victory against the Covenant required the UNSC's best and brightest, as well as an overwhelming numerical advantage. The ratio of UNSC to Covenant spacecraft needed to achieve victory in an even fight was 3-to-1 at best, for instance, and the Covenant wasn't so stupid as to allow these odds to happen if they could help it. Their tech was just too far beyond humanity's, and it wasn't long before mankind was forced into the losing side of a long war of attrition. Admiral Cole's great victory that allowed them to reclaim Harvest, with him taking the helm of the largest fleet in history of 40 warships, that was against one Covenant ship, and he lost 13. True, he didn't get insight on how to deal with Covenant naval assets, but I wouldn't call that a resounding victory by any stretch of the imagination.
No.
Something I've seen a few times is how people mention that the UNSC was able to win most of the ground.
You have cake!
What?
Look at the expression on this guy. You have cake!
We can do this the easy way or the hard way.
I like you, and I want you.
Did I catch you?
I want your blood on my blade.
I finally found you. I can tell you about Liberty Mutual.
Ground battles they fought but couldn't win in space. And since the Covenant only cared about glassing the planet and leaving, this meant that even winning a complete victory on the ground was useless. That's an understandable point of view to have. I mean, every time you play a Halo game, you see the Master Chief or Noble Six or some other really cool dude clowning on the Covenant at every turn. But unfortunately for the UNSC, this viewpoint is incorrect. It was a bit more even during ground engagements, but not by much. In all fields, UNSC was only able to win isolated engagements, usually losing the larger battle in spite of isolated success. And as stated earlier, the ground victories were ultimately meaningless. The Covenant would check a planet for foreigner relics, and then if they didn't find any, they just torched the thing. And since there were only so many planets with foreigner relics on them to force a ground battle, a lot of the times if the Covenant lost the ground battle, they just shrug and nuke the planet from orbit. For the 27 years this war lasted until 2552, the Covenant would slowly grind humanity down to almost nothing using this method. It wasn't completely peachy for the Covenant, however. There was some internal strife between the important races that we'll get to later, and during the Harvest campaign, they realized that despite the Covenant's massive advantage in all fields, it's a bit of a costly matter of eliminating an entire spacefaring species. Ensuring complete eradication would leave Covenant space lacking in defenses, and they had to find an alternative method of bolstering their fleet. If you've played Halo Wars, you already know what that method is. The Covenant attempted to reactivate an armada of foreigner warships they had found on a shield world. Though thanks to the UNSC Spirit of Fire's crew taking them down at every opportunity, the armada was instead destroyed. Surprisingly, when you detonate an FTL engine that rips holes into another dimension in the heart of a star, things get very hot very quickly for that solar system.
Yes.
During this campaign, there was also an
Extra
appearance by a
spicy.
very important
Little bit of spicy food there.
player that I will sure as hell get to, but the knowledge of that little eldritch horror never got out to the galaxy at large. Not yet, anyways. And humanity was able to achieve some pretty decisive victories on occasion, including a very fun one regarding now full Admiral Preston J. Cole. At one point, he was victorious in a massive naval engagement against the Covenant. 300 UNSC ships to 162 Covenant ships. Nice job, Cole. He even managed to get some help from an insurrectionist fleet, because when the aliens just want to kill every human, you forget past grudges pretty damn quickly.
Yes.
And then another Covenant fleet warped in. This was
Nice to
a
have a
fight that
common
he just
enemy.
couldn't win. Not with his fleet, at least. So he had an idea. Mock the Covenant as hard as he could. This might sound like nothing but bluster, and fair is fair, it was, but there's something you gotta know about the elite race. They are absolutely obsessed with honor. It's not always stupid honor like in 40k, where they forego things like ranged weaponry in order to charge a Tau gun line because Khorne demands it or some stupid shit. They'll be sneaky and lay traps and do whatever they need to do to win. All's fair in love and war, after all. But when you call their entire religion false, which again it was, but they don't know that yet, and scream that humanity are the ones that should be taking the foreigner's mantle, they get a bit angry. And when Cole openly invited them to prove him wrong, Well, the entire fleet decided to take him up on this challenge. Cole wasn't done flexing yet, though, not by a long shot. He plunged his cruiser into a nearby brown dwarf and fired every single nuclear missile he had at its core. 100 nuclear weapons was all that fake star needed to turn into a real star, and the Covenant fleet there was wiped to a man as it went hot. Cole also lived through this, by the way, just in case you thought he was done proving he had the biggest dick in the galaxy. A subspace travel signature was detected inside the brown dwarf just before it got hot, and some AIs calculated his survival rate at just under 90%. And rumors of human guerrilla fighters that were oddly successful at waging war against the Covenant persisted for years to come in the area. But as far as people can confirm, his story ends here. And you know what? I think he's got one of the few happy endings in the entire Halo universe. It's canon he might have settled down on a farming planet with his lover, and you know what? I hope he did. Of course, the last few minutes have been a bit too positive for humanity, so let's switch track.
Yes?
Admiral Preston J. Cole is honestly, he was honestly probably a far bigger asset to the UNSC than any of the Spartans ever were, really.
It sounds like it.
The true hero of the UNSC and of humanity.
His story is something I do think you should read. It's a short story in an anthology, and it's fairly brief, but it's really good. Preston J. Cole is a Chad.
Yes, Chad. Let's keep on going.
Back to misery. Despite all of these massive successes, the Covenant was too much for humanity to face. Every victory is balanced out by a dozen defeats. The outer colonies were slowly but surely destroyed, and by 2535, 10 years after the outbreak of war, all of them had either been confirmed destroyed by the Covenant or contact had been lost. Various measures were enacted to sustain humanity's survival. The Cole Protocol, there's our boy at it again, dictated that human ships either had to make random slip-space jumps when retreating in order to not have the destinations of human worlds tracked, or to wipe all navigational data and self-destruct in order to assure that if they were boarded, the Covenant couldn't take the data by force. Additionally, when a Spartan 2 was killed,
NordVPN.
listed as MIA to avoid a massive drop in morale as humanity realized that the legendary heroes of the war could in fact die. The war was even kept a secret for the first few months of the conflict, though this didn't last very long. All of this wasn't enough, however, and soon enough the inner colonies, where humanity's most developed infrastructure was, came under attack. The following pattern would then continue for most of the rest of the war. Humanity would hold the planet for a time, lose it as the Covenant forces engaged en masse, humanity would retreat, rinse and repeat. The Spartan 3 program was eventually conceived to make less effective but greater quantities of Spartan.
I love that.
Damn. Roasted.
Spartans. They didn't even bother kidnapping kids
be
with
like
good
that
genes like the
sometimes.
Spartan 2s, they just grabbed orphans off the street and pumped them full of chemicals and augmentations. These units saw success, but their losses were even greater than the 2s, with one engagement resulting in the deaths of 298 of the 300 Spartan 3s deployed. The worst came in 2552, the last year of the war. By this point, not only had humanity been fighting a losing war long enough for an entire generation of people to be born who knew nothing but defeat against an alien race who wanted them dead, but the UNSC had lost the majority of its military, and humanity the majority of its planets and people. A plan to find the Covenant homeworld and capture a prophet was hatched as a last gambit to prevent humanity's extinction. This was the final Hail Mary of humanity. Oni estimated that if this mission did succeed, humanity likely only had months left to live. The plan would begin on the planet of Reach, humanity's most well-defended planet
Operation
behind
Red
only Earth.
Flag.
Whoa.
Operation Red Flag.
Earth and the most important for the war effort, period. Everything from engineering to training to manufacturing to whatever spec ops shit you can think of took place on Reach. This plan was never achieved though, when in July of 2552, the Covenant finally found Reach. There was a whole load of foreigner artifacts on the planet, and the Covenant had found it via the luminaries that find such things. Side note, but that's also how they found human population centers a lot of the time without there being foreigner artifacts present. Remember that whole reclamation translation? Turns out, being the successors to gods has some downsides.
Yes.
Oni also knew that this would likely happen, but helpfully did not share this hunch with the UNSC in order to keep them in the dark about the foreigner artifacts.
How they wanted to do Operation Red Flag on the long night of Solace, that big carrier, but failed to inform anybody else. So the UNSC army and Noble team destroyed it before they could do Operation Red Flag. The fucking idiots.
Well, 1 second. The Puglars are awake. I'll be right back. I am back. You ready?
Let's go. I was just telling Arco about how not even the Inquisition can be this dense.
No, the Inquisition is actually extremely good at his job. And I mean extremely good.
Right, like when they have to hide information from humanity, they have a very valid point of doing so.
This is just dumb.
Oni also, if you haven't noticed, cannot do anything that isn't morally gray at best. They wouldn't sell you ice cream without lacing it with its cyanide and then putting a tracking chip with a cone. At least some Inquisitors are nice people. I don't think there's a proper Oni agent who isn't a shitbag. Reach was surrounded by orbital platforms capable of shooting tungsten rods at a pretty goddamn appreciable fraction of the speed of light. Pretty much the only thing capable of hurting Covenant ships on its own that wasn't a one-time use sort of thing. By the time the battle was underway, 60% of the entire remaining UNSC fleet was redeployed from other areas to protect the planet, and Spartans practically littered the place, including none other than the Master Chief and one Noble 6, equally deadly as Chief despite only being a Spartan 3. With all their might arrayed, how did the defense of Reach go for the UNSC? Well, even if you haven't played Halo Reach, you can probably guess, but here's a quote from UNSC Colonel James Ackerson about whether or not it was worth sending a ship to see the aftermath.
Here it
We are
comes.
not wasting a single UNSC ship to confirm what we have already seen a dozen times before. Reach is gone. Everything on it is blasted to bits, burned, glassed over, and vaporized. Everyone on Reach is dead.
Lovely.
Dead, dead, dead.
Thanks to the Remembrancer for that fantastic reading. I give him a cringe orc voice, he gives me an Oscar performance. You might have noticed that this video isn't as funny as my usual stuff, or at least that I haven't written in as many things that I think pass for jokes as usual. That's because for all the funny bits in Halo games, all the times where Sergeant Johnson talks about how he had to share his military-assigned rock with his platoon, Halo lore is just kind of depressing. Grimdark even, much like Warhammer. Oh sure, the games are all about you kicking ass, but the larger picture is, wow, it sure does suck to be a human in this universe, or really anyone in this universe at one point or another. But there's my little disclaimer for why this video might not be that funny. Back to lore. The fall of Reach took just over a month, likely longer than any planet before it aside from Harvest. It wasn't long before the Covenant found Earth as well. But I skip ahead a little bit. Because of the efforts of Spartan Team Noble, the UNSC ship Pillar of Autumn was able to escape Reach with several prominent figures aboard. Most noteworthy is of course John 117, the Master Chief, as well as the smart AI Cortana. Cortana is the most important one to talk about at first. In what was technically a violation of the Cole Protocol, Cortana had, instead of just jumping randomly somewhere within slipspace range, took them to coordinates deciphered from a foreigner artifact. At these coordinates, and with the Covenant fleet hot under their tails, they found the titular Halo, a foreigner-built ringworld whose purpose was as yet
What?
Like he said, and they found the titular Halo. Roll credits.
Yes.
unknown. The Covenant believed it would allow them to ascend to godhood as the Foreigners once did. The UNSC and Master Chief crash landed on the ring as the Pillar of Autumn had been taken heavy damage and waged guerrilla warfare against the Covenant to great success. Of course, if you played Halo, you know how this turns out. The Covenant find a locked facility with the words "Don't Dead Open" inside written on it, but unfortunately, the team in charge of this little expedition couldn't read and opened it anyways.
Yes.
They figured it was a cache of Foreigner weapons or something like that. It wasn't. It was the Flood. For those of you who aren't familiar with Halo, you might be wondering why busting a Foreigner water pipeline matters that much in the grand scheme of things. For those of you who do know Halo, you understand just how horrific this was, but I'll explain anyways. The Flood in 40k video will come eventually, but for now, let's just leave their description to the basics. The Flood are a race of parasitic beings that can infect almost any living creature and turn it to their side. If they can't infect something because it lacks a central nervous system, they'll just eat it and absorb its biomass into their own. And to top it off, they're hyper-intelligent to the point of being able to corrupt computers despite being entirely biological. There's so much more to them than that, but for now that's the basics of what you need. They're infectious to the point that, as the elite Ridus Vadam puts it in Halo 3,
One single flood spore can destroy a species.
the Covenant team was devoured almost entirely, with only a few survivors being present by the time the Chief showed up to offer any resistance. After the Covenant opened it, but before the Chief got there, some UNSC soldiers, including Captain Keyes, who was in charge of this whole clusterfuck, went in to check it out. Can you guess what happened to them?
Oh.
If you said they got eaten, then congratulations, you win this horrible quiz. All except for this one guy who never gets PTSD because he doesn't get to the post part of post-traumatic stress disorder. Now the war across Halo descended into a three-way
That's a
brawl
fat
as
F, my
remaining
guy.
UNSC forces had to contend
You what, mate?
I said, that's a fat F in the chat for you, my guy.
with an alien alliance on one side and the zombie apocalypse on the other. The
Lovely.
Foreigner Monitor AI-343 Guilty Spark contacted Master Chief and told him to activate Halo to defeat the Flood. He conveniently left out how this would eradicate all life in the galaxy, but Cortana thankfully kept the Chief from pulling the trigger on the gun pointed at the head of the universe. Guilty Spark took offense to this, and now it's a four-way war with the Sentinels of the Halo Ring joining the fray, because why not make this even more messy? Messy indeed though it was,
Yeah,
Master
why
Chief
not throw in
overloads the
robots?
Pillar of Autumn's split-space core, Halo explodes, and the day is saved. Except no it isn't, because after he's rescued, the Covenant find Earth. Fuck. Thankfully,
Yeah,
the
that
Covenant fleet
sucks.
that finds Earth is a small one, which Admiral Hood, the guy left in charge of the Unity Navy by this point, even notes as being odd. But that's not going to last very long once the Covenant realize they found humanity's homeworld, so there's no time to ponder this little mystery quite yet. After Master Chief dicks around on Earth killing aliens for a while, he and the daughter of the now-dead Captain Keyes hitch a ride into Covenant's space portal to another Halo.
Yay.
Yeah, there's 7 of them, it turns out. Sucks to suck, humanity. They land on it and get ready to see if they can't blow this one up again when things get even worse than ever. This is during the Halo games, remember, so it only makes sense that now the problems are just compiling one after another. How is it worse? Well, the Flood have already broken out on this planet and formed a grave.
Me gusta. Why are they barking? There we go.
Out on this planet and formed a grave mind. Imagine a hentai monster the size of Godzilla and he's as smart as 1,000 Stephen Hawking. Out on this planet and games, remember, so it only makes sense that now the problems are just compiling one after another. How is it worse? Well, the Flood have already broken out on this planet and formed a grave mind. Imagine a hentai monster the size of Godzilla and he's as smart as 1,000 Stephen Hawking. That's a grave mind, the guiding intelligence behind the Flood after they absorb enough biomass. Master Chief did manage to kill the Prophet of Regret before things really went south, who was actually one of the 3 prophets that founded his whole religion was a lie, but unfortunately Covenant space superiority was still a thing, so they just tried to glass the structure he was on with him inside of it. The Gravemind saved him, as well as the Arbiter, however, the Arbiter being an elite disgrace for allowing the first Halo to go kablooey. He and the Chief went their separate ways to stop the Covenant from firing the ring, and it's at this point I need to explain why an elite and a human are working on the same team, because we aren't at Halo 3 yet, where it's just a given. During the Human-Covenant War, for a while the elites followed the orders of the prophets without question. Humans are bad, kill all humans. Done deal. Eventually, however, their more martial and honorable sides started to win out. They felt humanity was worthy of being offered admission to the Covenant. If they could put up this good of a fight despite all the odds being stacked against them, why shouldn't they be allowed into the Special Alien Club? Additionally, the brutes, much less fans of things like critical thinking, were being seen as more and more of a replacement for the
This is true.
elites. Throughout the course of Halo 2, you can see this taking place as the brutes replace the elite as the head guards of the prophets. This comes to a head when the Arbiter is betrayed while he looks for the activation key to this new Halo, and the elites as a whole are ordered for destruction alongside humanity. Thankfully for everyone involved, but the Covenant I guess, the Arbiter is successful in preventing Halo from firing, with some help from Sergeant Johnson and Miranda Keyes. Chief infiltrates the mobile Covenant capital of High Charity, but the Flood have found a way in and rapidly infect the entire goddamn thing. Only the Prophet of Truth escapes, the final leader of the Covenant and the last surviving of 3 prophets who knew the truth behind this whole shit show. The second Prophet of Mercy was on High Charity too with them, but yeah, he got eaten by the Flood. I like how Truth is such a shit show in this cutscene that a race called Brutes is showing more compassion than he is. Master Chief escapes High Charity by hitching a ride on the Foreigner Dreadnought that was powering the place, and the final arc of the war begins. Yeah, he had to leave Cortana behind, but, you know, you gotta do what you gotta do. By now, humanity and the elites formed an uneasy alliance, since the elites have been forcibly made to see the truth of their religion, and humanity's taking whatever it can get by this point. Chief makes it back to the Earth, where things have not been great. Even though Earth's defenses were even better than Reach's, it's still well on the way to falling despite the UNSC's best efforts. Thankfully, the Covenant decided that right at the cusp of victory is the perfect time for a little civil war, so that's eased up the stress a bit. Master Chief, the Arbiter, and whatever tattered remains of humanity's armed forces are left fight the Covenant on Earth before the reason the Prophet of Regret pretty much tripped over Earth is revealed. He found a Foreigner portal that would take them to the Ark, an extragalactic installation that I've talked about in my Foreigner video, but to sum it up, you can fire all the Halos at once from there to kill everything, and it can make even more Halos. I don't know where it gets the materials to do so, being in intergalactic space and all, but maybe the Foreigners put a few more of those devices that can just casually tunnel into other universes to get the scrap needed for it. Portal to the Ark opens, the Flood are now unearthed because the elites weren't able to contain High Charity, and half of Africa gets glassed off the face of the Earth. Better than being devoured whole by the Flood, I guess? Everyone rushes to the Ark at once, the Covenant to finally reach godhood, the humans and elites to not all die, and the Flood to also not die and maybe eat everyone afterwards if there's time. Every side is making one final effort to win the war once and for all. Not really important, but we also get this banger of a line by Ridus Vadam, the elite in charge of their fleet.
Shipmaster, they outnumber us 3 to 1.
Then it is an even fight.
God, that's so fucking
That
cool.
line goes
Humans,
so
the elites,
hard.
and the Flood very briefly ally to stop the Covenant, and when they do, the Flood predictably betray everyone. The Ark is destroyed as the Master Chief, Arbiter, Cortana, and Sergeant Johnson fire the replacement Halo for the one from Covenant Evolve before it's ready. The Gravemind and all Flood prison are destroyed, the Covenant falls to pieces due to everything that occurred, and humanity has almost been completely wiped out in a war that killed billions on both sides. But with that, the Human-Covenant War has finally come to an end. Sides.
Including Johnson, Miranda, her dad, most of the Noble team, and pretty much every named character from the games who isn't Hood, Halsey, Chief, Cortana, or the Arbiter and Ratas.
But with that, the Human-Covenant War has finally come to an end. Except for the special ops teams of Spartans that lost contact with the rest of the UNSC and decided to go through with a plan to destroy an elite colony with billions on it. Since they were on their own with no way to talk to anyone, they didn't realize the war was over and a truce was formed between the elites and humanity. Nothing like when you lose cell reception to commit the war crime to end all war crimes. Am I right, fellas? But yeah, there was my 77k sub special. I always like talking about Halo lore.
Oof. I say again, oof.
And I do hope you not only gave this video a chance, but if you stuck around to the end, thank you. I sincerely mean it. It's always nice to branch out, and if this does well, this shows me that that's actually got some merit to it, you know? As always, thank you to my wonderful channel members. You are the Mjolnir.
There we go. Oh, wait, he always puts something at the end, doesn't he?
He does,
Yes.
yes.
He does. Hold on.
Unrelated to anything, but Halo really does have some of the best ship names in any science fiction setting. I mean, come on. The Covenant hits us up with the Solemn Penance, the Long Night of Solace, and the mother of them all, the Shadow of Intent. Meanwhile, the UNSC has things like the Pillar of Autumn, In Amber Clad, and my personal favorite, the UNSC Say My Name. Did you know that the Say My Name was a part of Operation Bum Rush? I'm not making any of this up. This is the plot of Halo ODST. It was a Marathon-class cruiser, too. That's one of the UNSC's capital ships. There's decent odds a Covenant ship was wiped off the face of the galaxy by the Say My Name. God, I love.
Well, that was interesting.
It was, yes.
Arco.
Heisenberg.
Heisenberg. Yes, very much so.
God damn right.
Yeah, God. Well, in any case, I did not know the first couple little bits of that. Why would you send the brutes on a first contact mission? Ever?
It was by accident. They just happened to be there.
Yeah, damn. Just damn. Just why? Doesn't make any sense.
To be clear, even if the brutes had, done it well, the three hierarchs would have taken power and declared humanity heretics anyway.
This is true.
So it's a lose-lose situation overall, then.
Yes. Well, that was the Human Covenant War. PancreasNoWork once again does not fail to, deliver. It's good stuff all around. Well, Arco, any final thoughts?
Not in particular.
Oh, okay. Eagle.
Well, I would say that's maybe around 80 to 90% of this is all ONI's fault because of their incompetence. Seriously, not even the Inquisition is as bad at their job. When they have to hide information from humanity, at least they have a valid point of doing so, when not telling humanity about stuff like, say, the traitor legions, demons, or chaos, or whatever.
Yes. Well, guys, I hope you had fun. I hope you learned something, because I know I did. I know that the brutes are the ONE, are the ONI of the humans for the Covenant. They tend to screw things up rather successfully.
And I learned about how Mendicant Bias was just this close. That's close to literally pulling the plug on the entire Covenant and said, I'm a head out.
Oh, literal representation of Space Jesus. What does this mean to you? It means I'm leaving.
Who would win, 100,000-plus-year-old super advanced AI shard, or a bunch of 6-foot-long worm boys?
All right, guys, that's it. I'll be catching you guys next time. All the PancreasNoWork's links are going to be in the description down below right next to my own, including my PayPal, my Patreon, and the Discord, where you can come in and request more Halo stuff, or 40k stuff, or just weird stuff in general. In any case, for myself, Arco,
bye-bye,
and Eagle,
adieu.
I'll catch you guys next time. And remember, kids, good times rhymes with war crimes.